Speaking of influential Illinois men, there's a man from Oakland who played a major role in history.
Dr. Hiram Rutherford moved to town in 1840 to start a practice. Several years later, he was at the center of a legal battle for hiding runaway slaves. Luke Ray has his hidden history.
If you're not from the area and saw this house, you probably wouldn't guess its place in history. It was built in 1847 by Hiram Rutherford, at that point a known abolitionist. But when he moved to town in 1840, he was an educated doctor, a rare thing at the time.
Out here on the prairie, nobody checked your credentials. You could say you were a doctor. You didn't have to have any training whatsoever.
He owns some of what's in the house today, but most things have been added over the last few decades, like this portrait of Abraham Lincoln.
Dr. Rutherford was a friend of Abraham Lincoln.
But Kathy Pardai and Kim McGee of the Oakland Landmarks Group say his image would not have been on the Rutherford's wall. It all goes back to the Matson slave trial of 1847.
There was some slaves being held at a farm up by Newman, Illinois, which was about 8 miles north of here. Well, the children were being threatened to be sold south, which was a death sentence. So the family of slaves took off in the middle of the night and came to Oakland, and they sought out Gideon Ashmore and Dr. Rutherford.
They hid the family seeking freedom and looked for someone to represent them in court. Rutherford asked Lincoln to take the job, but that wasn't possible.
Mr. Lincoln had to tell him, "I've already taken the case for Colonel Matson."
The abolitionists hired another lawyer for the case, which played out right in Coles County. Illinois was a free state, but a slave passing through would still be a slave. McGee says the main question of the case was whether the family lived in Illinois full-time.
The slave owner, of course, said they're in transit. He planned to take them back to Kentucky. The lawyers for Rutherford and Ashmore said, that's impossible. They've lived here for 2 years. They aren't in transit. They're in residence. So that was the crux, and that was what got them their freedom.
McGee and Pardai say Rutherford probably never forgave Lincoln for taking the other side of the case. They say at the time, most people in Oakland had come from the South and also sided with Matson. Today, they take pride in what happened and what influence Oakland might have had on one of the country's most celebrated men.
We like to say our little part in history is we helped change Abraham Lincoln's mind.
Dr. Rutherford's home is not the only historic site in Oakland. Another attraction is Independence Pioneer Village that features log homes, a blacksmith shop, a church, and a school from the early 1800s.